Right, welcome everyone. I see we have about 45 folks here with us so far, and I'm very happy to welcome you to the Friends of the Wissahickon annual public projects meeting. And here we are back on Zoom. We were hoping to be in person tonight, but given that we've been struggling with COVID in our office and trying to keep everyone safe, we've decided to go completely virtual tonight. So one of the benefits is that we're able to host lots of folks. Here we are already at 50, 51, and I think we have over 100 people registered. As we get people in the door, I would be happy to share some background information about the Friends before we dig in to all the projects, big and small, that the Friends of the Wissahickon has done in the past year, hopes to do in the coming years. And we have a special presentation from our friends at the Water Department as well tonight. So a lot to dig into. We're hoping to be right around 7-ish through our meeting. We'll have plenty of time for questions, and if we need to go a little over that, we will. So why don't we proceed to the next slide? All right, so welcome. In addition to some information about the Friends generally that I'll get into, I would like to share some information again, as I have in past years, briefly about some of the documents and plans and philosophies that guide our work. As I mentioned, we'll be going over some of the great work that we did with staff and volunteers in 2022. Some really exciting improvements that are coming to the watershed in the park through our partners at PWD. And then we'll wrap up with FOW's big capital projects that we've made progress on in the past year, looking to do more in 2023 and even beyond. So a meaty agenda tonight. And if I could have the next slide, that would be wonderful. Many of you know, because you're here tonight and you're probably on our email list and most likely are a member or volunteer, but the Friends is a 99-year organization. Next year, we'll be celebrating 100 years and we'll have 100 wonderful things to do, no doubt. And big activities and small coming down the pike for our 100th anniversary. We're an official park partner. We have over 3,000 members and friends. And we do a lot of many things. So we're always working to make our park greener, cleaner, more accessible. Working on our many, many acres, 1,800, possibly 2,000 acres of woodlands. And we're always caring for our trails, the historic landmarks, and some of the objects of public art we have in our park. And then one of the things that we really love to do is engaging with the public, providing opportunities for people to interact not only with the park, but understand the watershed and help us protect it. So thank you for being interested in our work tonight and for every day doing something for the Wissahickon and your community. And I will go to the next slide. Before I introduce you to our wonderful staff, I just want to put a plug. You may see in the chat that we have a link for where you can put in questions throughout the various segments of the program tonight. So you can see that link. As those questions come in, we're collecting them. And when we get to the end of the presentation tonight, I'll be either answering the questions myself or fielding questions to our other speakers. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce you virtually and through their shining faces, the FOW staff. So many people work behind the scenes and front facing in the park to make all of our work possible. We have an amazing staff. You're going to hear from Pauline Berkowitz, our project manager, and Sean Green, our director of field stewardship tonight. But everything we do takes something from everyone on the staff. So I'd just like to thank them all. They do tremendous work, care passionately about the park, take great pride in engaging with the public, and I'm so grateful to all of them. Next slide, please. So this is a slide we've seen in the last few public projects meetings. We are currently working through strategic planning and hope to be releasing our next 3-year plan, which will take us 2023 through 2026. We remain committed to using the principles of our ecological land management plan, where it has identified key data gaps, also created really great work areas for where FOW can make a difference, especially where it comes to engaging the public in some of that ecological data collection, and also some of the projects that we can do together to make our park better. Our nearly 2 decade Sustainable Trails Initiative, we remain working through the completion plan that brings that project to completion, but also continually evaluating what we've learned through those 2 decades, applying those best practices to our trails and our system, and coming back and making adjustments where necessary, and also evaluating what really worked and where can we find those areas of transferability. And then not last, and certainly probably one of the most important areas, is our work with our partners, Philadelphia Parks and Recreation and the Philadelphia Water Department. We continually are checking in, and we've been so grateful to have a really collaborative process over the last year with both departments, and meeting with staff regularly, finding out where we can be of service and best value to our city partners. And then always thinking the underpinning of that on a foundation of diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging. So looking at our work, where is it in alignment with these areas? Where might it not be? And how can we adjust to bring it into alignment? And also evaluating project priorities for meeting those goals. And here we have then our mission, which really speaks to both public engagement and the conservation of the asset. All right. So that's really where we're focused when we undertake our work. And as I said, projects big and small, volunteers, staff, contractors, we do it all. So next slide, please. And now it's my great pleasure to turn this over to Sean Green, Director of Field Stewardship. And he has amazing projects to share and showcase. And Sean, welcome.
Thank you, Rafian. I'm excited to be here, and wish I could see everybody in person, but we're back in Zoom, so that's perfectly fine. So
2024, the 100th anniversary public projects meeting, right?
One can hope. One can hope.
Let's hope.
So let's take a step back and look at some of the things we did last year with volunteers. Here's a selection of stats. We had over 1,000 individual volunteers completing over 10,000 volunteer hours, which is quite an increase from last year. We had just over 8,000 volunteer hours last year. So we're still bouncing back from COVID and still seeing the effects within volunteer engagement. But if yesterday was any indication of what this year is going to look like, I think we're on track for a successful year, because yesterday was our Martin Luther King Day of Service. We had 187 volunteers come out. So it was really impressive to see. But back to 2022, we ran over 140 volunteer service days. We were able to increase that, which means we were able to increase the stewardship within the park. Some of the things we were able to accomplish: over 20 tons of litter removed from the park and watershed, over 20 miles of trails improved, much of that corridor sightline, some of it was tread work. We've removed over 42,000 square feet of invasive plants, and we replaced them with a lot of plants, but that's on a later slide. Also not mentioned here, we did remove 64 down trees off of cleared trails. And so I'm going to take you on a tour of some of the things that we accomplished last year. Next slide, please. So in case you hadn't noticed, the sagging bridge on the Yellow Trail near the summit and Old Line Trailhead is now gone. This was a footbridge that was collapsing into a gully, and a detour down to Forbidden Drive had been implemented by the city earlier in the year. And FOW removed the bridge in November before it entirely collapsed. I can say that there will be a new bridge that will be installed in the area as part of a long-term plan, though this will wait until the full extent of anticipated restoration work in the area is known. For now, I can report that there is a perfectly suitable detour option that skirts near where the bridge used to be, and we'll be updating detour signage soon. And on the subject of footbridges, we do actually have short list of, or it's not that short list of footbridges we will be working on in the coming year or this year with our structures crew and our crew leaders. Next slide, please. And speaking of our crew leaders, we piloted our Zone Steward initiative this year. This is kind of a program within our existing crew leader program to increase our ability to monitor and steward sections of the park. So to give you guys a kind of little idea of what this looks like internally, we have the park split into 18 mini zones. And in 2022, we had all the zones on the eastern side of the park assigned to crew leaders. Our goal is that eventually within a couple years, we'll have enough crew leaders to fill out the entire park, to really have a lot of eyes and legs on the ground to make repairs and keep an eye on things. But so this past year, we were able to fill out the eastern side of the park. They report a lot of issues to us. They completed a lot of habitat work, including removing invasive plants, as well as planting native trees and shrubs. And they also did a lot of trail work, a lot of corridor and sightline clearing. And this is a strategy we're very, very excited about. It's proving to be successful, and I think an excellent format for stewardship as we move forward. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we did a lot of plantings. Last year, we planted 1,776 native plants. I know that number probably sounds very high, but that includes all of our live stakes and herbaceous plugs. But I can say we did do 740 trees and shrubs in a lot of areas throughout the park, including at the Harvey Street tract, the slopes surrounding the Monster Trail, Houston Meadow, the Orange Trail near Bluebell Park, a riparian area north of the Red Covered Bridge, and we are continuing to turn the stormwater pond behind the FOW workshop into a pollinator habitat. So a lot of those plugs went in there, and we are starting to see a lot of monarchs. So happy to see some growth in that area. Many of these were done with support of a True Vitalize grant, which was a corporate sponsor of ours last year. Next slide. And of course, everybody knows the trails in the Wissahickon, and we did a lot of work along with corridor and sightline clearing that our crew leaders did on the eastern side of the park, and we were working on our public service days. We also completed a couple other larger projects, including closing a small gully at the Lavender Trail. This took quite a few Saturdays to fill in a big hole. You can actually walk past it now and not notice anything was there, but a lot of the work was also remediating out where the stormwater was coming from. So we worked a lot with general volunteers and also our crew leaders to install a lot of contour logs and slow down the flow of water coming down from a slope. We also completed an armor dip at Bluebell Park. Again, both of these projects are really just helping to remediate stormwater runoff. And I'm happy to say at the end of last year, we hired a new field coordinator, Patricia McGuire, who comes to us with a lot of expertise in trail work. So we're really, really excited to have a full field team back, and we have a lot of trail work projects planned for the coming year. Next slide. Leave No Trace continues in the Wissahickon. Many of you probably joined us in 2021. We hosted the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics for a week-long Leave No Trace hotspot, which included service projects and workshops and all sorts of other fun stuff. We learned a lot that week on how to maximize our impact in educating park users and reducing the amount of litter left behind. And so this year we are just really continuing that work and continuing to refine our approach, including we hired a core of seasonal crew who were really fantastic this year, spent many summer weekends removing litter and engaging visitors at Devil's Pool and McGarty Dam, handing out trash bags and giving lots of other information. We ran a workshop at the Greater and Greener Conference. Myself and our other field staff at FOW attended a Leave No Trace training session this summer to gain skills on how to best interact with park users and encourage Leave No Trace principles. We also installed some large permanent signs, which you have probably seen at a lot of our high use trailheads. and also seasonal signage throughout the park that outlines a lot of Leave No Trace information. We also hosted a pop-up event at Devil's Pool, and we also hosted our first annual Leave No Trace Summit with park partners to kind of get all of our minds together and figure out how we can approach this. So we're looking forward to continuing this in 2023 and refining our work and figuring out how we can really hit the nail on the head with ensuring that we can keep the park as clean as possible. Next slide. And this year, we have a lot of big plans, including some large scale cleanups, a lot of trail projects, and of course, a lot of plantings. As I had mentioned yesterday, we are already off to an amazing start with 187 volunteers at our Martin Luther King Day of Service. And we also have a lot running over the winter, or we don't have a lot running over the winter, with the exception of the amazing David Bauer, who runs Wednesdays and Sundays, very popular, wonderful ways to learn about the park and get involved. He is actually planning on running at least 99 service events this year.
I wanted to jump in and say it. 99 days of service. David Bauer's going to do it. He did all the math for me.
Yeah. So
he can do it. Come help him, folks.
Yeah, he did ask me, is this definitely 99 years? Because next year he's going to do 100, I guess. So, but by the time we get out of winter, we will be back in full swing. As some of you may know, winter is when we are in training mode, planning and training mode, and we have a new core of crew leaders and trail ambassadors that will be training. But by April, we'll be back in full swing. With a lot of regular service days on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, most Saturdays and Sundays. And if you want to mark your calendar, we've got some big events coming up. April 1st, that is April Fool's Day, and this is not a joke. Lincoln Drive will be closed again. We'll be partnering with Parks and Recreation to do a big mega cleanup, which was a blast last year. So if you didn't get out last year, come out April 1st. April 22nd, Earth Day falls on a Saturday finally, and we have a big 3-location event planned for that day. And May 13th is Love Your Park. So we will have a big location project TVA right now, but we have a lot more in the works, and I'm looking forward to a really successful year. And we also have a lot of other options, individual stewardship options like habitat monitoring and doing your own Wissahickon cleanup. All of this can be found on our website, so I encourage everybody to check out our events calendar or volunteering page and read up on it. If you are part of a group, corporate group, school group, club, organization, and you want to come out, we have a lot of info. We're always happy to have private service events. And I think that's about it. I hope to see everybody out in the park at some of our events this year. And I'm going to pass it on back to Ruffian.
Thank you, Sean. Great work in 2022 to you, the volunteers and the staff. It was really gratifying, I know, for all of us to see those volunteer hours get back over 10,000 and really seeing everyone back out in the park together after so many years trying to keep it going apart. Now we're together in the park. So excellent. Folks, please check out those days Sean mentioned, especially if you haven't been to a Lincoln Drive closure. It is a blast and a great way to really experience that southern end of the park with no traffic and be out there on the drive. So I hope to see folks there. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce one of our great partners, the Philadelphia Water Department. We have Rick Howley, who is the environmental engineer supervisor for the water department and someone who has worked in the Wissahickon and throughout the park system for many years, and bringing both the improvements to our parkland and its function as part of our water department. So Rick, welcome. I know you have some updates on some projects we talked about last year. And folks, just a reminder, if you have any questions about Sean's portion or what you hear from Rick, you can check out the question form. It has just been dropped in the chat again. So welcome, Rick, over to you.
Hey, thanks a lot, Ruffian. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Somebody tell me if you can't. Okay, great. So yeah, my name is Rick Halley. I work for the Philadelphia Water Department. I manage a group called the Ecological Restoration Group, and we basically design stream restoration or wetland creation projects that deal with the water department's park or infrastructure within the park. So basically that interface between the infrastructure and the natural environment. So I'm going to talk about one of our projects that is going to construction. It's actually, well, it's going to be advertised. It's with our projects control unit right now. It's the Parkline Drive Interceptor and Gorgas Chute and Outfall project. You can go to the next slide. Thank you very much. So just a quick outline of what I'm going to talk about, the location of the project. You will see a map with a few different sites, basically Gorgas and Parkline, and then what the restorations are. And then I'll talk a little bit about the trails and get into the timeline. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. Like I said, so here's a map showing pretty much the location of where the three spots I mentioned are. So on the top left-hand side is the location off of Gorgas Lane, where Gorgas Lane comes into the park, and there's that gateway there. As you come around and see the stream from Gorgas Lane on the, there's the yellow trail goes up the right side of the hill there. And we have a couple of issues with basically infrastructure that needs repair. So you've got the Gorgas Chute, and then there's a collapsed outfall and gully up there. And I'll get into details of what the solutions are, but it just gives you an impression of what's there. And one thing I wanted to mention before I forget is that since you guys mentioned the bridges, we might have to remove a couple of bridges and then either replace them or rebuild them in place at that site. The other site is the Interceptor crossing and culvert off of Parkline Drive at Horter Street. So you take the trail down from there, and then where you'd normally make that right and go across the Interceptor that goes over top the stream, it's basically a large stone culvert that goes across the stream. That culvert's going to get repaired, and so we'll be dealing with a trail closure there, but I'll get into all that in a second. So you can go to the next slide. So as I was kind of starting to say about the Parkline Drive site, basically what's going on here, if you take a look at the top picture, that is the downstream face of the culvert. That hole that you see there is allowing the stream to flow through it. It's a small unnamed tributary to the Wissahickon that that basically runs right down by that Parkline Drive Horter Street intersection. The structure is in need of repair in terms of just patching some cracks, and probably the biggest deal in regards to the structure itself. Well, I guess you can see some of the cracks and some of the concrete that is basically eroding away on that lower picture. But in the top picture, one of the things you'll notice, that because again, this is the downstream face of the culvert, you can kind of see where there was some concrete built up before, and the stream has eroded out the bottom of the structure. So we're going to be pouring some concrete to replace that, and then we're going to put rock underneath there to stabilize the scour pool downstream of the culvert. We're also going to do some bank revetments, two very short rock structures on both sides of the stream to prevent the erosion of the stream bank. So yeah, that kind of addresses the channel erosion. So it's part of the Orange Trail system. Basically, what's going to happen, I mean, I guess I said I was going to get into the trail closures at the end, but essentially you'll during the time that this project will be going on, you'll lose access to the trail from Parkline and Horter Street, and then the sewer, and then the crossing. Sorry, tend to think about everything in terms of sewers. So yeah, oh, that reminds me, if I forgot to mention, the reason why that culvert is there in the top picture is in the top of that culvert structure is the Wissahickon high level sanitary interceptor is running through there. It's basically a 5 by 3.5 foot pipe that runs through there. So that's why that culvert is there and why that piece of the trail connects across the stream channel there. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So yeah, I kind of mentioned most of this stuff, concrete repairs to the interceptor, the masonry culvert structure, construction of the plunge pool, and the bank stabilization. You can go to the next slide. This is a picture of the Gorgas chute. So this is one of those first structures. This is actually right near where Henry Avenue runs over the Gorgas Run. This is right at the end of Fountain Street. So basically this outfall drains that area, that neighborhood, and this chute connects it down the hill to the Gorgas Run. And because the chute is built on such a steep slope and it was kind of built in segments back in the day, you can see a lot of cracking and spalling. It's been there for a long time. So there's literally holes in it. And the flows from the storm sewer, the flows coming down the chute, as well as the flows going through the cracks now, are causing erosion around the chute itself. So the whole idea here is to just repair, patch up the chute as much as possible and create a new clean flush surface going down to the stream channel. You can go to yeah, okay, great. I was going to say go to the next slide because the Gorgas outfall is a picture there. So this is a picture of an outfall that's off of Henry Avenue. And it actually, because of this outfall completely collapsing here, pardon me, the yellow trail has been dealing with some erosion problems. So, so basically the storm flows from Henry Avenue have gutted a gully going down to Gorgas Run, and that has damaged the yellow trail. So what we're planning to do here is create a new sewer from the existing end of the sewer here that you see, and create a new outfall. And what we're going to do is run the new storm sewer underneath the trail and then build the outfall on the other side of the trail. So you might see some more manholes if you look to the left up the trail, because it's such a steep slope. We got to have some drop manholes to get the water down there. But you won't have the trail being compromised, and you won't have a gigantic gully where the stormwater kind of goes unmitigated and causes all the erosion problems. So, so a new outfall and a trail being in much better shape, and then we'll add some riprap downstream of the outfall just to kind of dissipate the energy and maintain a stabilized hillside. Downstream of that, there's basically bedrock sticking out of the slope. So it should be stable and be able to get to the run after that. So this is what the part of the site that I was talking about. Because you have to go up the yellow trail from the Gorgas Lane trail, we're basically going to be closing down the trail from the gateway at Gorgas Lane down to the yellow trail where it connects to the Gorgas Lane trail, and then up the yellow trail till you reach this outfall where the water crosses over the trail there. So that's going to be a closure there. And so you're probably looking at a diversion where you end up staying on Forbidden Drive for a little bit longer to bypass that. So you can move on to the next slide. So yeah, I kind of talked about the trails a little bit. So the orange trail will be closed off for the project over at Parkline. Oh, and the white trail, I guess, from Parkline Drive down to the orange trail. And then at Gorgas Lane, it'd be the yellow trail, and that trail coming down off of Gorgas Lane at the gateway. So you go to the next slide. So like I said, right now our project is gone to our projects control unit for bidding. I haven't necessarily heard word yet on when it's going to be advertised, but I'm a little bit concerned about it because my understanding right now is that we're not bidding any more projects during this fiscal year. So that's why I don't have an exact idea of the construction start date right now. That's why I have August in there. But if it doesn't get bid until July, then you're probably looking at it being more like, further into the fall of 23. So I'm hoping that we're bidding this soon, and August is a more accurate date, and we're closer to the summer.
But you'll keep us posted, and we'll keep everyone here posted as that happens, no doubt.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we've got the consistent meetings with you guys and everything. That's been working out really well. And yeah, we're excited about this project getting started. One thing I wanted to mention too, real quick, I want to get back to you, Ruffian. Sorry. I just
Yep.
wanted to mention too that again, this is split between two different sites. So by my estimate, I'm thinking it's looking at like maybe a 6-month to 9-month project altogether.
Mhm.
So what I'm thinking is most likely to happen is you probably end up with about 3 months at the Parkline site and about 3 months at the Gorgas site. So fortunately, I know we've done some projects that have been a lot longer and a lot more, of you dealing with the detours on the trails and everything, which, nobody likes. So I think these will be a little bit less of a, well, at least there'll be a pain, but it'll be at least a little less.
Shorter pain.
Yes, exactly. It'll be a shorter time frame. So hopefully that'll be a little bit
And
of a
really long-term resiliency for some of these, not only your infrastructure, but the trails themselves that are really being compromised by some of this.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean,
Term discomfort for longer term benefit.
Yep. Yeah, we got to maintain the infrastructure no matter what. And the fact that we can do improvements to the park and the trails are, just a great thing for us to do on top of that. So yeah, definitely looking forward to this. And, I'll answer any questions after the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you, Rick.
Mhm.
Right. That is my cue to give another plug that folks should use the link in the chat to ask any questions you might have, either for Sean or Rick, or coming up next, Pauline Berkowitz, our Capital Projects Manager. Pauline, over to you.
Thanks, Ruffian, and good evening, everyone. I will be walking you through our upcoming projects. So let's get started. Next slide, please. So here is an overview of what we'll be discussing this evening. We'll start with our East Falls Reroute and Habitat Restoration Project. This is part of the STI completion plan that was published in 2018 that outlined 5 high priority projects in the park for trail closure and reroute. This project is currently in the design and fundraising phase. Next, we'll discuss the Wissahickon Valley Park Germantown Neighborhood Connection Project. This project seeks to connect park parcels through sidewalk and crosswalk construction, and we are also rehabilitating trails in the area and habitat. We have already begun our habitat restoration throughout 2022, but we are in the design phase for the sidewalk and crosswalk and hope to bid out construction for that this year as well. Then we'll cover our restroom facilities master plan. This plan is finally complete, and I'll be sharing details on that, as well as the next phase of this project to install a demonstration project, the permitting and design for which will be this year. And last, but certainly not least, our Valley Green Run Restoration and Pedestrian Bridge Project. Ruffian will be discussing what's going on there, where we will be restoring the lower Valley Green Run, as well as constructing an approximately 200-foot walkway. And the permits for that have been submitted, and we hope to be in construction in June. Next slide, please. So here's some additional geographic context for the trails we're looking at in East Falls. This is a small segment of trail off of Gypsy Lane behind Lincoln Drive and Wissahickon Hall. The trails here have long been known to be unsustainable and eroding, thus we'll be closing this segment of trail here you see in red. Next slide, please. So this photo illustrates a bit of the challenge of dealing with this area here. We have a rapidly and ongoing eroding steep hillside that's kind of created this almost impassable rock scramble to the trail right behind. So we spent a lot of 2022 exploring different options for what we wanted to do here, looking at cost estimates and initial design plans from various trail builders, and wanting to find a solution that maximizes restoration and access while also minimizing disturbance. So ultimately here we'll be moving forward with a stone staircase, which serves the dual purpose of one, restoring access to that trail behind the photo here, and upholding the hillside with rock armoring to minimize future erosion and have it be able to withstand future weather events. This will be a hybrid project where contractors and trail builders will be working closely alongside FOW staff and our trained volunteer corps of crew leaders, where they'll be learning about stone placement as well as rerouting the trail along the contour to meet up with existing trail that is sustainable. Being that this is a hybrid project, the timeline here is fluid. We're still in fundraising mode, so we will have more updates for you throughout the year and next year as well. Next slide, please. So now moving to our Wissahickon Valley Park Germantown Neighborhood Connection Project. This project is also in the southern end of the park, looking at the area in and around Harvey Street between the SEPTA Regional Rail and Lincoln Drive. Next slide, please. So this project is funded by the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources with a match from Councilwoman Cindy Bass of the 8th District, as well as a grant from the National Recreation and Park Association through their corporate sponsor Sensodyne and the Clean Air Council. We were just awarded a grant from them, who offers funding in partnership with the Philadelphia Department of Public Health. So this project came to us out of concern from neighbors living on Harvey Street who were unable to access trails well. It was clear in the fall of 2020 when we saw the sidewalk that they were in deteriorating condition. Thus the sidewalk and crosswalk component are a large part of this project. But in addition to that, we're improving the existing trails in that section. We'll be installing a kiosk as well as other wayfinding and signage, bringing elements that we see elsewhere in the Wissahickon right here. And of course, our native habitat restoration. That was the bulk of what we did with our volunteers in this area throughout 2022. These images show 2 out of the many service days we had here. But these 2 are special because we were able to get road closures, invite our neighbors at Harvey Street, have other volunteers, and get everyone together to clear invasive vines, do other invasive plant removal, and plant a number of trees and shrubs. And next, I will walk you through a little bit of our designs for our sidewalk and crosswalk. So just to get folks oriented here, we're looking at Harvey Street between the SEPTA overpass and Lincoln Drive. Harvey Street is just split into 2 panels. So if I were to walk down Harvey Street, make my way down and exit the top panel on the left, I would immediately be continuing the bottom panel on the right, crossing the street, and then making my way down, perhaps all the way down to the Henry Houston statue, where I could enjoy the view of the cars and enjoy some recent plantings that were done. Next slide, please. And this is a zoom in of the design plan for our crosswalk. To have the crosswalk be in line with streets department requirements, we are adding these elements that include a raised crosswalk. This will make it ADA accessible and also include these rectangular rapid flashing beacons. These are traffic calming elements which serve to alert and slow down motorists as well as make it more accessible. So we are in the late design stages for the design and crosswalk, and we'll hopefully be bidding this out for construction this year. And with that, we'll move to our next project, our restroom facilities master plan. As I mentioned before, it is incomplete. You can read it on our website. I believe the link will be dropped in the chat shortly. But I wanted to take this time to say thank you to the over 1,000 people who contributed to the plan. We had in-person and online surveys that were conducted throughout the summer of 2021, as well as 2 public meetings, one in September of 2021 and one again in February of 2022. And this input is really important in helping inform this plan. that identifies up to 16 potential restrooms in 7 locations throughout the park. So the criteria for identifying the locations is expansive. I'll touch on the important parts. The first is the outcome, the data that we collected from our park visitor count. We had 12 counters installed throughout the park. We also wanted to find restrooms that are within, if possible, in proximity to utilities such as sewer, water, and electric. Also finding locations that have accessibility for large vehicles, not only for the initial construction of the restrooms, but also for ongoing maintenance. And then perhaps most importantly is about reducing any adverse environmental impact. The Wissahickon is a watershed park, so we're not looking to add any impervious surface that could lead to more surface runoff into the Wissahickon Creek. So all of the locations for these new restrooms are either the adaptive reuse of existing buildings or are located on existing impervious surface, which includes parking lots. I'm also excited to share, we have been bearing the lead here a little bit, but we have been awarded $500,000 from the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program. This is a unique and special grant opportunity offered through the Commonwealth that could not be made possible without support from our Representative Chris Rabb and Senator Art Haywood. They were really instrumental in making sure that we had a line item in the state's capital budget. So a big thank you to them. So what's ahead will be the design and permitting and construction of a demonstration project or pilot project in connection to the restroom master plan. We are narrowing down our locations to 2, which are featured in these images. The first is the Rex Avenue toilet, which is located in the center of the park, a little ways north of Valley Green Inn, which you see in the photo on top, as well as a 10 box located in the southern end of the park in the image on the bottom. So we will be designing and permitting this restroom facility this year. So we will have more to update you on that. And without further ado, I will turn it back over to Ruffian for our next project.
Excellent. One more plug for the question sheet, folks. Hopefully it'll get dropped in the chat one more time. There it is. And this will be our last project. So if you've been hoarding your questions, now's the time to get them in. That's fine. You can take us over to our slide. We have this map here to orient folks, probably Valley Green Run, you would know to be on along Valley Green Road. And this project we've had at least the last 2 or 3 public projects meetings as we've moved through design, bidding out our project, refining the goals of our access way, and very happy to say that as Pauline mentioned earlier, the permit package has been submitted, and we anticipate with hopefully with once we have our permits in hand to be in construction towards the end of June of this year. As long as those permits are issued and the weather is wonderfully sunny and great working weather, not too wet, we will be into construction at that time. Again, permits in hand and weather permitting throughout that construction period, all signs point that this project could be begun and finished in 2023. So we hope to have a firm date for groundbreaking soon, and then really look forward to being in the chilly weather for a fine ribbon cutting towards the end of 23 or early 24. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. This is an image that's hopefully familiar to folks who have attended this meeting in the past. Here you can really see that we've taken out the trees, and don't worry, we're going to put them back in. But in this picture, we've taken them out so you can really see the topography that we're working in here, and where the alignment of that pedestrian bridge. If you're familiar with the old walkway, it was along the opposite bank, the one closer to the road. And that walkway was part of restoring access when the bank had collapsed, something we've heard a lot about tonight and in past years, banks collapsing and erosion and gullies. And then the landscape underneath that small walkway washed away about 10 years after it had been put in. And once that happened, it was really a challenge because now we had a much more unstable area, and it wasn't quite so simple of a fix anymore. And at the same time, as we were thinking about what to do, we were hearing a lot from park visitors about how unpleasant, dangerous, surprising it was to have to walk on the roadway for so long from that upper parking lot, especially for our pedestrian visitors, from that upper parking lot to the bridge where you would then cross over into Valley Green. And it was really at that time that we started first thinking about this. So this project's been on our list since the bridge came down in 2014, and we put in our late 2014. We put in our first grant application for this project in 2015. So we've been thinking about this for a long time, and it will be a wonderful thing to see it go into construction. All right, next slide, please. Here we can see really a great view of some of the conditions at the site, and they've only gotten worse from when this photo was taken. We continue to see that the footbridge itself has collapsed more. The wing wall there, the retaining wall is coming down. You can see some infrastructure there with that galvanized steel pipe, and a lot of problems. There was a tree that came down there. So these are the conditions that really need to be improved. And that is what we're looking to do. So let's have the next slide, please. Now this look here, what we just looked at is where the walkway is going to be in. And this here is just north of where you would approach the new walkway. And if you're familiar with the trail down from the upper parking lot at Valley Green Road, just after you crossed this little section here, you would come to a temporary staircase that brings you back up to the road. And there's a trail to your right, or a footbridge that takes you to the Orange Trail to your right. And this new walkway will continue this trail that we're looking at here out onto the boardwalk. It'll take you on the opposite bank, so trying to stay away from the conditions on that collapsing side, and then bring you back over to the bridge. One of the new additions to the project from previous years is we are looking at a treatment to this area here as well, so that we're not just building the new bridge only to have our access point crumble here, but stabilizing this both to make it more attractive and more sustainable. So next slide, please. These are some of the techniques. If you're, again, familiar with the upper parking lot at Valley Green Road, you may have seen our project that took place between 2012 and 2014, where the large boulder step pools were established in the run, dry stacked boulder walls holding up the banks. And that also stabilized the parking lot up in the upper parking lot. Years ago, if you parked your car there, sometimes you might wonder, would it still be there when you came back? And not because someone stole it, but because the parking lot may have collapsed. So that was a really successful project undertaken, and that treatment in the run will continue on down underneath the new boardwalk. And you'll be able to see the stream from the new boardwalk. That collapsing bank will be stabilized, and we will be keeping folks off the road for much longer. All right, next slide. Again, another view, this time the bird's eye view, flying over the top. I know our colors are very attractive, yet muted. But you can see access coming down from the upper parking lot starts where you see that little A. And you walk then onto the walkway. It takes you over to the other side. And if you see the little letter B, we'll have a viewing platform, anticipating that some folks, while maybe needing to go quickly through, others might want to linger and take in the view. So having an area where you can step over to the side there at point B and stay out on the boardwalk for a bit longer without being in the line of traffic, as it were. And then point C, that brings you in right above the beautiful stone bridge that crosses the main creek into the Valley Green area. Next slide, please. Again, these are some of the renderings I believe that we've shown in the past. So you're seeing this bridge with the translucent sides. There's very strong, what they call a bit of an invisible netting on the side, and angling just ever so slightly out so that you have that wider feeling at the top of where the handrails are. Sourcing the decking, black locust decking, with some intermittent metal grating as well, metal planking. Next slide, please. Here's the viewing platform. I believe appropriately, our little friend here is wearing an Eagles jersey, but taking in a moment to look at the stone bridge. And what we don't have is the view that you could see if you turn to your right, if you're facing this way, and look at the beautiful rocky outcropping. Next slide, please. And here we are at a little bit more of a distance. We can see that southern entrance to the walkway and also the viewing platform again. And one detail that we've also built into this is while most of this walkway will be the black locust decking, the viewing platform will have the see-through metal grating so that you'll be able to look down at the waterway running through and just create some more of that visual interest in this feature. Next slide, please. All right, so here's some of the nitty-gritty facts and details. We have 200 feet that we are building here on this walkway. It's going to be the galvanized steel superstructure built on these concrete piers. This was an upgrade from the additional spec when we bid the project out, which had this on as a white pine bridge. And adding this galvanized steel superstructure on the concrete piers has allowed us to have fewer piers, so less points where we need support under the bridge, a stronger, more resilient structure, and hopefully one that is also much more attractive and becomes a lasting feature of the park. And again, that guardrail, but I've talked about that. One of the features of this project is that it's very expensive. I am so grateful to our many funders, state agencies, private foundations, as well as individual donors. And we have some donor recognition opportunities that go along with this project, I think add real value as well in the hardscaping and approach, and give us opportunities for some amenities like benches and kiosks. Next slide, please. And if you're interested on how you can support the project, there's more information, case statement for support, and all the ways that we are building in value to the project, as well as thanking folks. And with that, I am going to conclude our meeting, and I'm going to turn it over to questions. And let me open up our question sheet and see if we have any. Just give me a minute. And I am not seeing any questions. So if you've asked a question, I don't know if we can let people drop in the chat. So, hi, Sean.
Hello.
I'm going to suggest that we see if we can let folks drop in the chat whether they've asked a question or not.
Hey, Ruffian, you can just actually scroll down. The questions are at the bottom of the sheet.
Oh, I see. Okay, questions didn't come in till line 29. Forgive me, folks. I was looking at the top. Here we are. We have one question here that I can answer right off the bat. we have recorded this program, and so yes, you'll be able to see the slides from tonight's meeting once the recording is up. All right. John, we have a question about graffiti, and do we want to know about where we see it? I feel like we do.
Yes. I mean, the Orange Trail from Valley Green Road to Devil's Pool, yes, we know about. The graffiti on trees is a lot more difficult for us to deal with, but I did actually last year work with a group of rock climbers, removing graffiti on the bike path near Ridge Avenue, and I was introduced to the most wonderful tool that is a self-siphoning, battery-powered power washer. And I'm excited to get us one so we can actually get this off of the rocks in these very inaccessible places where you can't really carry a generator and a power washer. So
folks, yes, if you see graffiti, it's possible we know about it and it's on the list, but we always love to hear from you. We've heard send it in either through reporting a problem on our website or just shooting an email to an FOW staff person. Sean, I have a question about cleanups. Someone thanked us for addressing Devil's Pool cleanups. Will weekly cleanups be held this summer to address litter concerns? And then we have a question about, large visitorship along the trail. So I feel like I'm going to ask you to address that a little bit. Some of our plans with Leave No Trace and our seasonal crew.
Yes, we will be out. We will be hiring another seasonal crew who do a lot of other work other than trash cleanups, but unfortunately our seasonal crew is with us in the summer season when we have most people, and our main concern at that time is cleaning up the litter before it gets in the creek, making it more beautiful, more accessible. We will have recurring service days that will also be focusing on cleanups in those high use areas. And our trail ambassadors are very much our outreach wing of our volunteer corps will be out a lot. Our volunteer program manager and myself have some new plans that we're looking to test drive this year with a lot more engagement at high use areas, so that we're a bit more visible, we can provide more information, and hopefully make this a better experience all around for everybody, first time coming to the park and for long-time visitors.
Excellent. Rick, I have a few questions for you on your project. I'll give you a chance to.
I'm listening. I'm for some reason I'm not seeing the questions showing up in the
Oh,
chat.
no, I'm going to ask them of you. You can't see them. They're behind the scenes.
Gotcha.
All right. So one question is, can PWD daylight the UNT with a bridge rather than a culvert?
No, I usually am all in favor of daylighting streams. We've done it at a couple other project sites, one out in West Philly on a tributary, the West Branch of Indian Creek, a tributary to Cobb's Creek. But no, unfortunately, the structure there has to remain in place because it protects the sewer. Otherwise, we would have to rebuild like some kind of new structure for the sewer, which would be a lot more damage to the park and a lot more damage just reconfiguring all that stuff. So yeah, unfortunately, the structure that is there to hold the sewer in place and get the trail across the stream is something we're stuck with, unless something significantly changes financially with the water department. That's not really happening right now. And but I think what we're going to do is going to be something that's going to be good.
Great. Another question, kind of balancing the shoot versus the possibility of green infrastructure.
Shoot versus the possibility of green infrastructure.
So, well, yeah.
I was just going to say, in terms of, so the water department is kind of evolving in terms of green infrastructure and how we define it and how we utilize it. So I've worked on some stormwater management wetlands in the area, Sailor's Grove, the one at Courtesy Stables, and Wise's Mill Road. So those have been pretty successful projects. So now when I say the water department is involved with our MS4 permit, it's a municipal stormwater management permit. It basically is the permit that's part of the National Pollution Elimination Discharge. It's a whole big thing. Sorry, I'm
And
spelling
there's
out the
great
acronyms a
reports
little
on
bit.
the water department's website where you can read every year all the
Yeah,
things.
so
been accomplished for it.
the permit for us to discharge stormwater through our municipal system to the streams is currently under review. And one of the things that we expect to come from that is in the future, us doing green stormwater infrastructure in at what we call the MS4 area, or the separate sewer area. If anybody's not familiar with what I'm talking about, the city has combined sewers and separate sewers. Fortunately, Wissahickon is a separate sewer watershed. Tacony is a combined sewer watershed. Cobb's is a combined sewer watershed. Pretty much all of Center City is combined. So the reason why I got into like the definition of green stormwater infrastructure, as far as the city and the water department was concerned, that was only in combined sewer sheds for the longest time. So we haven't really done GSI in the MS4. We are now taking a look at what we could potentially do. It's something we're planning for right now. So now one of the things that's difficult with it in this regard, in the combined sewer area, we've been very willing to try to create new systems. So basically completely dislocate inlets from the combined system and create essentially a micro separate sewer system for a small drainage area and disconnect those inlets. Here, the opportunities are there to work at the end of the pipe because we don't have diluted sewage running in them. So you could potentially end up with more wetlands in the area. In terms of the chute, that's going to be difficult. The GSI would probably have to be up off of the Fountain Street and Henry Street. I think it's like Henry's like two different streets at that location. It's kind of weird. Sorry if anybody lives on Henry Street. But there is an open grassed area that we were kind of looking at in terms of doing stormwater management when we were looking at this project, but the depth of the pipe kind of made it impossible to get the water out of the pipe and into this area. So that's kind of a limiting factor. And that's the reason why we hadn't looked at that. The other thing we had kind of looked at for that is completely removing the chute and creating like a series of step pools down the hill. But we were very concerned that essentially these sites are really vulnerable in terms of the stream restoration when you just built them. So we were worried that the rocks would settle, you have extremely steep slope, the water could potentially erode something and pick a new path, and then you end up with a gully there anyway. So we thought that the simplest, sanest, most cost-effective thing to do was to simply replace the chute, or not replace the chute, repair the chute in place, and just kind of, maintain the status quo or get back to what it originally was built as. So yeah, we have considered things like that, and we're definitely looking into more stormwater management facilities and I guess what you would call green infrastructure in the separate sewer area, which means the Wissahickon watershed now.
Excellent.
Sorry, that was a little long-winded, but
well, it's a lot of good detail, so we appreciate it.
sure.
We have just a question about the one last for the culvert, asking was the culvert restored maybe about a decade ago? So thinking about I don't recall that project over the last decade, but
I don't think it was. It may have been. I mean, there was some shotcrete along the bottom of it, which is usually an indicator that, like, okay, yeah, somebody came in, the water department probably came in, did a quick fix, like we just kind of threw some concrete on it, slapped some concrete on it and said, okay, it's stable. But that's the reason why, you with the continued scour, you now see that like shell of concrete in between the bottom of the bed and the bridge. So it ultimately doesn't really fix the problem. It kind of, yeah, you just end up with a shell of concrete there. So you didn't really fix the cause of the problem. You just kind of patched the symptom, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And so when we're doing this project, we're really looking more so at like addressing, what the actual issue is at hand here in terms of like this scour underneath the bridge. And, we'll address it with, yeah, we will plug some concrete underneath it, but then what's really going to be the fix is the rock to stabilize the stream bed and the stream banks downstream of it. And the upstream part of the culvert is in pretty good shape.
Excellent.
Mhm.
Related to, and this is a little bit more for you, but also for us, when those trails are closed, people are asking, can they just go out and carve their own new trail? And we'd really, really prefer that you follow detail signage. If possible, we will look for reroutes around the project site or providing access to those upper trails. But user-defined or rogue trails creation is a real challenge in the Wissahickon. We have over 50 miles of designated trail and many, many more of desire line, user created, or even user built trails out there. And all of those have the potential to become stormwater runoff channels eroding our forests. So we will look for those reroutes and hopefully get them in place for folks ahead of the projects going into construction.
Yeah, I really concur with you, Ruffy. And the foot traffic. So if you're making a new trail, you could end up diverting water down that trail, and then you could end up with a new erosion problem. We've actually seen that at a lot of places in the Wissahickon, specifically because of all the steep slopes. So we're looking at doing a project out at Devil's Pool to kind of repair the face of the bridge approaches. And one of the things we've noticed is the amount of foot traffic that runs down the side of the bridge and how much erosion that's caused over the years, that we can kind of tell historically based on the stones that are now exposed on the side of the bridge. So, I think it's such a short time that it shouldn't be too much, that hopefully it's not too much trouble. I know how much everybody loves the trails out there. We try to do things so that we can provide alternatives. It can just be difficult when you're like, okay, I got to get to this spot where the two trails converge. How am I supposed to keep these two trails open when I'm literally working at the intersection of them? But we'll try and do the best we can, and we'll definitely do the project, in as timely a manner as we can. But I would say, if you see the fences and the detour signs, please, just, if nothing else, stay out of the construction site. Like, I don't want anybody getting hurt. These operators are very safety conscious, but, if you're behind one of these excavators and they can't see you, they could swing the excavator around, they could back it up, and, they're in a huge piece of equipment where they're just not going to hear you at all. So, yeah, for safety's sake, just give us a little bit of time while the, you'll see exclusionary fencing and the detour signs. And, when you see them, just, do your best to give us that time and follow the detour. And, hopefully it's a really, really short inconvenience.
All right. So for now, I'm saying you're off the hook, Rick. I think I've addressed most of the PWD questions. Trying to stay on track here with our sheet. And a couple folks, a lot of common questions here about really loving, Pauline, the calming feature on Harvey Street, and wondering about other areas. And I think that we don't have any immediate projects to point to beyond Harvey Street where we're working on sidewalks and roads, but certainly that is something on a longer term list of looking at where there might be areas of concern and is there an opportunity for improvement. So I'd encourage folks, we have a few suggestions here. I've actually received a few emails earlier in the week about places where people have concerns about crossings. And again, we would be in the very, very earliest phase of kind of accumulating those and thinking about, is there a place that the Friends can make an improvement? And or is there something that all of us can advocate for in that direction? So no big details beyond the work at Harvey Street in a construction, nearly construction way, but really think an important issue that we continue to look at. Also thinking about safety as it regards to lighting around our restrooms. We would anticipate some either skylights in the restrooms or lighting if possible, and definitely would want that to be friendly for our bird life, so providing the lighting necessary without being a deterrent for our feathered friends out there. And let's see, here we go. Pauline, I'm going to ask you to answer this since it's a little, I'm playing both question and answer here. So, and Valley Green, but this is for Valley Green. Will the Valley Green Run Boardwalk still connect to the trail going upstream along the Wissahickon?
Yes, that there is a small footbridge that is just before the northern approach for the newly constructed bridge. That small bridge will not be impacted by the project, but will receive a facelift, as it were, to mimic the elements of the larger bridge. And the access to the orange and white trails there will still be available.
Yes, and related to that, that bridge currently is, also provides both the pedestrian and equestrian access to the equestrian trails on that side, and will continue to do so, connecting this is the smaller bridge to the trail that comes down from the upper parking lot. All right, lots of questions too about security and safety. I know this is a large issue around the park, and what can be done to resolve frequent car break-ins. And I wish I had the magic answer to this. There's a strong push in some cases for cameras, and that's really after the fact. And we'd really love to see the break-ins not happen. We always encourage folks to plan ahead before you come and not to put the onus. Everyone should have an expectation of a fine visit to the park where your car is where you left it, how you left it. But we really do encourage you to not leave anything in your car and to report immediately to the police and the Parks Department. And you can certainly share it with us if you've seen something happen. And we continue to be in touch with our council representatives. Councilman Jones is very concerned about this issue, as well as with senior staff at Parks and Recreation and PPD, as we see car break-ins around the park and around the city continue to be a huge issue. We will have more signage out there from Parks and Recreation as we move into the busy season this spring regarding this issue. We don't have any plans on FOW's end at the moment to install park-wide cameras. It's a large initiative, a bit beyond our organization's capacity. So, but continue to advocate to your council people and to your, especially when it comes into budget season, more staffing from our Parks Department makes our parks more accessible, safer for everyone. So let's continue to be there to support our department. All right, a few questions, and we're jumping around, but that's okay. Generally, will there still be trail access? And I'm going to have to assume that relates to water department projects, and we will still have trail access. There may be detours, either new temporary trails, perhaps some reroutes, or perhaps detours down to Forbidden Drive and back up again, but hopefully mapped, signed, and we'll let folks know about that. All right. All right, we have some questions about, and maybe Rick, you might, I don't know if Rick's still here, if you might pop on.
Yeah, I'm still hanging around.
I have a question about a huge gully
Okay.
at Old Line and Glen Campbell that's heading toward the trailhead at Summit Avenue. I don't know if that's anything on your
Line.
I'm not familiar with it. Is it on Wise's Mill Run?
It might be the Summit and Old Line Gully. I think
Oh.
Glen Campbell is around there.
If we're talking, yeah, then Glen Campbell threw me off, but if we're at Summit and Old Line, that area continues to be a real challenge. That's where the bridge wash that was had kind of sunken into the gully, and Sean showed us the photos earlier of where it was removed. We do have a little bit of user-defined reroute there, and we're looking at temporary crossings. We're reluctant to put a major investment in the trail there until there's a larger plan, hopefully from the water department, but not to put Rick on the spot. We know it's a challenging area, and some of the things that we heard a lot of mention of MS4s and CSOs and all these things, but some of those clarities on what sort of improvements can meet MS4 requirements may allow for some more investment in gullies like this. So it's a huge hole, folks. I mean, that restoration effort is millions and millions of dollars, and we're keeping an eye on it and really prioritizing as FOW's role right now is maintaining that yellow trail access. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, sorry, just right off the top of my head, I'm not familiar with the site, but I think if you guys can coordinate with me on it, I'll take, I could have Rick Anthes go out and take a look at it and kind of get a sense of what's going on. And yeah, I think considering that MS4 permitting and crediting stuff that I was talking about, there are potentially more opportunities to look at sites. Like I said, typically in the past, I've had to justify my projects to my superiors by tying them to the infrastructure. So if there is an infrastructure there, we're not kind of starting off on the most justifiable foot in the first place. But like I said, I think with the new potential MS4 crediting protocols becoming more of a regulatory driver, there could be something, there could be something there. So I don't want to get everybody's hopes up. If it's something that, I honestly, I don't make that decision. I provide the justification and, my professional opinions to our executive staff. And then, they give me kind of an approval on being able to spend money on that stuff. So yeah, I think if you guys don't mind, if we could, if you guys are really familiar with the site and be willing to either, have a separate meeting about it, or maybe do like a field visit with Rick and me, or at least with Rick at some point, that would be great. Not that I want to.
There's two Ricks at the water department, everyone.
Yeah, kind of my co-pilot so I deal with design and he deals with the planning, which does like the assessments, and they kind of coordinate with us to develop project packages, pardon me. So yeah, it'd probably be him and I, or him and somebody from my team or something, going out and checking it out.
Excellent. So hopefully we're all thinking about the same spot. Pauline and I and Sean are pretty familiar with the area we just described, and putting that in context about that gully. I agree, it's huge. It's only getting bigger. It's definitely a challenging area.
You said Summit and Old Line?
Summit and Old Line, yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to look it up on the map right now, that's all.
We'll send you all of that.
Yeah, right. Sounds good.
So Paulina, we have one of our final questions here. one last one for you and one last one for Sean, and then we'll thank everyone for being with us tonight. So will the restroom facilities master plan reduce some of the need for portable restrooms throughout the park?
Ultimately, yes, that is the hope. Throughout our planning process, we learned of the significant expense it is for portable restrooms to have them maintained so frequently, given the high volume of visitation that we do see in the park. The plan assessed the various locations for the park and the number of units per location based on the assumption that, or based on the highest possible volume that those areas in the park would see. So if we see all of our hopes and dreams of building all these new restrooms in the park, ultimately that should reduce the need for portable restrooms, although right now we do heavily rely on them and are thankful for Parks and Recreation for providing them, for filling the current gap that we have.
Excellent. And Sean, you get an easy one. When's the next volunteer day?
Actually, that would be tomorrow, which is David Bowers Wednesdays. And so David Bowers running Wednesdays and Sundays. You can find these all on the events page. You can also go to our volunteering section of our webpage and see we have a whole webpage just for our upcoming volunteer service days. So for the next month or so, hopefully we have good weather and they don't get canceled. It'll be Wednesdays and Sundays. And the next big Saturday is going to be April 1st. Not a joke.
Not a joke. It's the real deal.
April Fool's Day, Lincoln Drive closure, cleanup. It's going to be awesome.
Excellent. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for spending.
Hey, Ruffian, I did recognize that site. I just
Yeah.
needed to see it on the map, I guess.
Yeah.
Rick and I have visited that site before. Those gullies are huge. I think we'll have to talk with Rick about it. I know he had something in the works because he wanted to try and utilize it for the crediting and everything. We were also talking about potentially putting like inlets in there and kind of having a system, but that's probably why there hasn't been too much action on anything there, is that there isn't an existing system for us to connect everything to. So yeah, we'll talk about that.
Excellent.
Sorry, it didn't recall in my head right away. Sorry.
All right. Folks, we're nearing in on an hour and a half. And so if we didn't get to your question, we've captured them all in our smart sheet. We can answer some more in upcoming e-news or publications in our newsletter. But I really thank everyone for being with us tonight here again on Zoom. It's been good to share all the good news and some of the progress, challenges, opportunities that we have out there in the Wissahickon. We hope to see you all out in the park really soon. Have a great evening.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.